What's up, ladies and gentlemen? It is Kevin Jacklitz with the Kaged review, and I'm really excited because I have just started what I have been kind of working on for a while. Haven't really got it into motion until today, and that is the art portion of my channel. I'm going to start with a lot of tutorials that teach people the basics of especially portrait work, art in general, but mainly portrait work, because let's face it, if you can draw a human face, you can draw anything. So, I'm going to start today. I'm going to teach people a couple of techniques for graphite dust painting. Graphite dust is basically ground up number 2 lead pencil, in essence. And it's really good for blending and making things look very lifelike. The problem is, graphite dust can be a pain if you're not familiar with how to use it. And you can ruin a painting just as fast as you can make it look good. So I'm going to show you how I paint my portraits with graphite dust. I'm also going to show you a little bit of the difference in graphite dust versus a regular pencil. Typically I use a mechanical pencil when I draw. I use, number 2 HB lead, and it's just hard enough to where you have to press for it to be dark, but you can still have very light shading with it. You have to have a light touch, but you can do it. The softer the lead, the darker you go on the paper, and I prefer to find that middle ground where I can do both. So this will give you some contrast using a mechanical pencil to draw in and shade with versus the brush. The brush to me is far superior. Much better blending. I do like the pencil for some hard lining and for very dark areas, especially in outfits. But we'll get into that. So after today's little graphite dust lesson, I'm probably going to walk into how to measure out a face, how to, create perfect eyes. I think I'm going to start with eyes when it comes to the face. I'm going to break the face down into every little portion because there's a lot of things that people miss when drawing a face. Things like the iris has these little lines that go back and forth all the way around your iris. And so you can't just draw a dark shaded iris and have it look like an actual person's iris. There has to be the lines there. Same thing with lips. There's lines that crease the lips. So I'm going to try to break that down and really begin my art tutorials with what I think is probably the funnest thing you can do with art, and that is drawing people. Now I'm also going to be doing a couple of other very cool portraits here pretty soon. One is actually of 2 deer in a fight. And then I'm going to draw it's a Japanese house, got really cool old Japanese architecture with a lot of cherry blossom trees and bloom all around it, with a mountain in the background. So it's kind of nice. You have the Japanese architecture, you get to learn how to draw the cherry blossom trees, and you also get to learn how to draw mountains in the background. So I'm going to touch on a lot of things. It may be slow going. Some of these portraits I'm doing are pretty big, and I'm probably going to record a lot of that process in building these portraits up, doing them step by step, and so that way there's at least a little bit coming out each day. So ladies and gentlemen, this is it. It's finally here. The Kaged artist, welcome. And here is the beginning. Graphite dust. So, ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, I'm working on my Sasha Banks here. And originally I wasn't going to work on Sasha Banks, but that's alright. I'm going to start by filling in a couple of lines that I really hadn't finished on the portrait yet. I got most of it outlined, but not all of it in its entirety outlined. So I'm going to go ahead and touch up the outlines, and at this point it's really like connect the dots. You already have the majority of it lined up, so you're just kind of connecting 2 points. Pretty simple. Have the bottom part of her left hand I have to touch up, but nothing big. The belt here is kind of nice because it has a really dark shadow behind it, so I can make a really dark line here. And typically with portrait work, it's all shading. There's really no hard lines, so any chance I get to put hard lines in makes things easier. I absolutely love it. So we have to fill it in. We'll make that dark shadow behind it and kind of do the same thing on the other side of the belt. And then we have to finish touching up the hand. And as you can see, the next digit that I have to draw is actually a little bit behind the other two. So I'm going to go ahead and fill it in and pull it back just a little bit. It's unfortunate that my hand is kind of in the way when I'm drawing the actual lines, but unfortunately with the positioning of the camera, it's just how I have to do it. But it gives you the idea of what I'm doing here. And the outline, really basic, nothing big to worry about. Next time I'm going to try to get it to where you can actually see the picture of what I'm drawing, so that you have something more to go by. This is a first trial run with this, so I'm doing what I can. Art is, I mean, really it's 90% observation. The key to drawing anything is a good eye. Being able to pull out the little details and everything, the minutia of a project. And the really cool thing about graphite dust, once I get into that, is that it's basically, like I said, ground up number 2 lead pencil. There's really not much difference to it. It's just a very fine powdered version. And thankfully this will show you the difference between using a mechanical pencil and something like a graphite dust with brush approach. And I always suggest that if you're going to draw with pencil, get a mechanical pencil. The leads are very thin, they make a great point, and for a lot of like really fine detail, sharp points, it's the best you can use. I use a regular number 2 lead. It's a 2HB. 2HB's a little bit softer, but slightly softer, not terribly soft. It's soft enough to where you press, you can get very, very dark areas, but hard enough to where you can still have a light touch and make very, very light areas. So it's a nice middle ground. The funny thing is that with this portrait so far, the hardest part has been the little plate where you see legit boss. That was very tedious to make because not only do you have some very fine lines, it's very small, and just a lot of fill-in work with a mechanical pencil. All that was done with the mechanical pencil. And to fill in very dark with such a fine tip takes time. So here's the graphite. You apply it with a paintbrush. And you can see where I've got everything outlined. And the trick when you're using graphite dust is apply it to your brush and then knock off all the excess dust on the brush. You want very little at a time. A little bit of graphite dust goes a long way. If you have too much graphite dust on your brush, it's going to go on too dark, it's going to become blotchy, and it becomes a trial at that point. So you apply the hard lines as dark as you feel you need, and then you literally take what you already have on the paper and use the brush to blend it out, and it makes a nice even shade. It blends very, very well. And you can see the difference already. Like I said, make sure you apply your brush and then knock off all the extra dust. Incredibly important. I will keep reiterating that because that's one of the keys to using dust in a paintbrush. You have to make sure that you get everything off of it, because once you get that extra dark spot on there, it's virtually impossible to get it off. I don't care how good your eraser is. I like using a thin, stiffer brush for the dark lines, for the darker shaded areas. The stiffer your bristles are, the more it's going to make kind of a streamline line for it. And the softer brushes are for blending. And I have to say, I was very happy with the way the face came out on this. You know, I wasn't sure I was going to use Sasha Banks for any type of art tutorials. I just wanted to draw it to see how it would come out. And I was very happy with it. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and go with this and start my art tutorials for dry brush with this one in particular. And it's funny, I actually posted this once already, and I had to re-edit it because I was playing music in the background, and I didn't get any strikes, thankfully, but I got blocked in the United States from 3 songs and monetized by the record label for a couple other songs. And I'm like, you know what? No, I'm just going to go ahead and take these songs off. So I'm doing a voice recording in the background, just recording over what I've already done. And that way, you guys can understand what I'm doing and I can explain it. And I don't have to worry about anything from the music. So, with this thinner, flat, hard brush, I'm just going from that hard line that I made and making streaks from that dark all the way over the rest of the breast. And that way you get that nice curved shaded look. Now you can do the same thing with the pencil. You have to have a very light touch, and you have to extend your lead out quite a bit. At least that's what I do. I push the lead out to where I can put the pencil almost horizontal, and very, very lightly just try to blend in where you have all the shade in there. And you do have to have a very light touch with this. It's not something that you can push really at all and not screw it up. So you have to be very light with your touch on that in particular. And as you can see, it kind of does the same thing. I do like the brush better because it blends better. With any kind of lead, even a mechanical pencil, you're gonna have lines. That's just kind of the way it goes. The brush, you don't really have lines. You're able to kind of blend anything almost seamlessly, and I really like that. And go up here to the neck. You have one part where one of the muscles that come down from the jawline all the way down the front of the throat, you will pretty much always have a shadow there. And so you kind of darken that in and bring that shadow to the right into the throat a little bit more to give it a little bit more depth perception. And you'll notice that I have a napkin under my hand. And the main reason for that is if you have your hand with oils on it, rubbing up and down the portrait that you're drawing, you're going to completely blend in all that lead, and it's going to mix together, and it's going to kind of screw it up, honestly. So you want to make sure that you have a napkin or a piece of paper or something under your hand. And then you can take this brush, follow down that same muscle that I was talking about, and blend it in. And the part that I'm shading into the left is clavicle. It's the bone right there on your shoulder in the front. So you want to make sure you get the shading from the muscle down the neck and then the clavicle, that bone right there in front. And pretty much any portrait you do, you're going to have that on anybody. There are some portraits that, you know, people are under very well-lit areas and it doesn't show up as much. And you take a little bit of a lighter touch to blend in the rest of the skin. You want to blend every part of the skin. The paper that you are going to do portraits on most of the time is white. And I don't care how pale anybody is, they're not actually white. So you need to have at least a light layer of lead to show that there is something there, a contrast to the paper itself. Some people don't do that. Some people, they actually leave a lot of area white. That's their choice. That's how they like to do it. You have to remember, I haven't had any art classes. I had one arts class in high school. Didn't really teach me much, so you know, this is the way I have found that works for me and what I think looks the best for me. The problem is that there are some of you that have had a lot of schooling and are probably going to know quite a bit more than I will. But for beginners, I think that it's a really good practice that you shade in all the skin. You do a light once over all over everything. And if you have areas where there's light reflecting off, I tend to do that with my eraser. I draw in the shine with an eraser at the end. That's a trick I learned from a couple old artists that I was watching, and you know, watch them do portraits, and that's exactly what they would do. They would have these huge elaborate portraits. They would cover, you know, every square inch, and then if there was light reflection, they would draw that at the end with an eraser. You have to have a very good eraser, and that's something else I'll probably do a tutorial on at some point, is the materials that I use. I know some people, they really want to know what they would need to get started, and I'm happy to do that at some point. And here, starting on the strap lines, and the thing about the outfit that Sasha Banks has on, and it's very unique. It's got multiple straps all over the place, so that makes it a little bit more difficult. Thankfully, it's pretty skin tight, so there's not much in the way of wrinkles, but you have lines where there's light reflection or just patterns, and you have to be able to draw that in while you're doing this. And you start with the lines of the shine that reflects off the bands in the outfit, and then you shade around that very darkly. And you can see there how the bands are starting to come together. And like I said, if you're filling in any area darkly with a mechanical pencil, it's going to be a little bit more tedious because you are using such a fine tip to cover a lot of area, and to cover a lot of area darkly. It just takes time. There's no getting around that. So if you're going to do a bigger portrait with a mechanical pencil, be ready for it to take time. Now, there are definitely other ways of doing it much faster, and I'm going to show you that on the next band. This is to show you the contrast of how each works. Each has its own pros and cons. The biggest con for a mechanical pencil is the time it takes. It is very time consuming. One of the pros for using graphite dust is it moves a lot faster. One of the biggest cons is that when you have graphite dust and you're trying to make a dark line, you're using more graphite dust, which means you're going to have a little bit of a powder that falls on the paper, and you need to blow that off right away, because if you're not careful, you can accidentally blend that into your drawing and smear or make a smudge with the graphite dust. Another good thing about using a mechanical pencil is that it's very exact. You have very small spaces you can make look exactly perfect. Very fine tips are incredibly helpful. So we'll go ahead and start doing a lot of filler in the middle. The hardest part about drawing very dark area places is that you have to draw in any shine on it first. You can't just draw it all pitch black and then hope that your eraser is going to pull it all off. It's not really going to work like that. You have to be able to use the shine. And you can tell that it really does, you know, it takes some time. There's no doubt about it. Sometimes if I start drawing a lot, if I'm doing it with a mechanical pencil, I get burnout because it's so tedious. You know, you have to really laser focus yourself for a while to get all the really dark areas done. Which is what I really like about the graphite dust, is it does allow you to do things a lot quicker, and then you can come back with your mechanical pencil to do the fine edges. You can do a lot of filling very quickly. So it's good 411 for anybody who wants to start using graphite dust. You know, there's really no separation in the look from a number 2 pencil or a mechanical pencil from the graphite dust. There's really not. On paper, once it's blended, it's seamless. You really can't tell. So it's not hard to do the big shading with your paintbrush and then come back with a fine tip to get all your, you know, hard edges. And you can see it's very laborsome. And that's why sometimes I do get burnt out drawing portraits, because if you could imagine drawing a portrait as big as the one I'm drawing, all with a mechanical pencil. I've done it before when I didn't have the other equipment, and man, it just burns you out so quick. It really does. I like being able to get in there, do my portrait as quickly as possible, move on to the next one. But when you don't have the proper equipment, the paintbrushes, the graphite dust, well, this is how you get stuck with. So there's your strap, all finished, and it probably took, what, 15 minutes for that one little strap? So we're going to show a comparison now, going from the mechanical pencil to the graphite dust. And you can see, in no time at all, I am getting a lot further with this brush. And that's one of the huge differences when you're talking about drawing against a mechanical pencil versus the paintbrush and the graphite dust. The big thing is you have to blow that off. You have to get all the extra dust off of that page as quickly as possible. And as long as you can do that, you're fine. You just have to be very vigilant about that. And that line is probably just as wide as the strap on that other band. And it took no time at all. And that's your big secret there, is you've got to make sure that if you're going to do a portrait of this size, that you're using your head and you're thinking about how you can get through it as quickly as possible. I still love that face. Now obviously I haven't done much with the hair yet. I've just kind of got the outline of the hair on both sides. I have a lot of shading to do there yet. And I come in with my mechanical pencil here, and I'm making the hard lines for everything. And as you can see, it is pretty seamless. I really love how that face came out. I really do. I was so happy when that face came out looking like it did. And I'm probably going to darken it up a little bit. I'll do a little bit of a darker shadow all over the face to, really make it pop. But one step at a time. I'm trying to get everything to look right. And it may take a little bit longer, but that's fine. You can see where I've started the stomach definition too. This line coming down the center of her belly, you know, she's got pretty rock solid abs. And the dark shaded area is where her lats are coming in. So I'll go ahead and I'll fill in the rest of the stomach at some point. This is going to be kind of where the very lower stomach muscles are coming down and reaching her short line. And this is going to be dark here, because the whole left side of her body is going to be shaded kind of dark. There's going to be a big shadow on her rib cage, and then more shade coming down her stomach muscle line. So you're going to have darkness there. You're going to have a couple of spots where the rib cage are going to show up where it's kind of dark. And if you go too dark on something, sometimes you can erase it. Sometimes you can get over by kind of darkening the whole portrait a little bit. You do have to be very careful though, because getting too dark on one area can really screw up a portrait. And you see where I'm starting to do the blending process, just like I did with the cleavage there. You know, you start with the dark area and you blend it out. It's very easy to do with this style, but very difficult to get right. You'll notice that I keep going back and I'll hit something. I'll try to make sure that it's got all the graphite dust off the brush, and then I'll come back and I'll hit it again to make sure all of it's off. I'm gonna do the darkening line here for the waistband. And that really makes things pop. When you can get that really dark line like that, it really brings everything out so much more three-dimensional. Alright guys, so I wanted to show you the application for graphite dust. Hopefully it gave you some good ideas. I'm going to check out. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. A couple of really good ideas. Remember, it is super important when you are using your brush and the graphite dust that you have to shake the graphite off. It is very, very easy to get too dark. I started a while ago, my very first portrait. I made that mistake. It was a very good portrait overall, but I made the mistake of going too dark, and there was a splotchy spot on one of her cheeks. It was actually where the crease lines up here, and so it was something that overall ruined a very good portrait. So you have to be aware of that. And practice both with the mechanical pencil and the brush. Develop your own style with that. I certainly have. I have not had any art schooling whatsoever except one high school course. It taught me virtually nothing. So, you know, have fun with it. Experiment. See what you can do. So, ladies and gentlemen, I do hope you enjoyed this. I will be setting up more tutorials here in the near future. If you like this, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and share. My name is Kevin Jackwitz. Ladies and gentlemen, Kaged Nation out.